I'm Marilyn. 10 days before my wedding, at my rehearsal dinner in front of 60 guests, my world came crashing down. My parents stood up and publicly tried to destroy me. My mother held up an old photo, tears streaming down her face, and declared she abandoned her own child. She had a son as a teenager and left him when he turned 7. My father, with a sharp look at my fiancé, Mark, said, "She's selfish and heartless. She'll abandon your future kids too, just like she did her own." The room fell into an eerie silence. I felt like a caged animal, exposed and humiliated. But Mark, bless his soul, didn't flinch. He stared at my parents with a calm, cold look and said, "You have no idea what you just started." As I stand here now, looking back on that night, I realize it was the moment the truth finally broke free from the chains of lies. But to understand how I got here, I need to go back to the beginning, to a time when I was just a naive 10-year-old girl. I grew up in a seemingly normal family in a small town. My parents, Henry and Grace, were well respected in the community. My older brother, Ethan, was 4 years older than me. From a young age, I learned that in our family, love often meant covering up the truth. My mother would often say, "Don't tell Dad about Ethan's report card. He's got enough on his plate." And I would nod, hiding the evidence to protect our family's image. When I was 14, Ethan went to rehab for the first time due to a drug addiction. My parents told the extended family he was at a special summer camp. They warned me, "Keep this a secret. It would be a disgrace." And I did, keeping my mouth shut. At 15, I had to quit the soccer team. I told my coach I wanted to focus on my studies, but the real reason was that I got a job at a local diner, earning $8.50 an hour. Ethan needed a second stint in rehab, which cost $3,200 for 30 days. Every paycheck I earned went into what my mother called the family fund, and I never saw that money again. I became a master at being invisible, fixing problems quietly so that no one outside our house knew the chaos within. Our perfect family facade was held together by a 16-year-old girl, me, who just yearned for someone to notice my silent suffering. The summer before my senior year of high school, I found Ethan unconscious in our bathroom. I was terrified. I called 911 and lied to the paramedics, saying he'd accidentally taken the wrong medications. My parents arrived at the hospital 2 hours later, calm as if nothing had happened. On the way home, my mother said, "You did the right thing, not telling them the truth. Family protects family." Little did I know, I was learning a survival skill. 3 months later, Ethan called me from jail. His voice was small and broken. "I'm sorry," he said. I asked what for, and he replied, "Everything that's coming." In May 2008, I received an acceptance letter from Stanford University with a full-ride scholarship. I'd worked so hard for this since my freshman year. My guidance counselor was overjoyed and told me, "You're getting out of here." I pinned the letter above my desk, imagining my new life at college. But then, on April 15, 2008, at 3:42 in the morning, my phone rang. It was Ethan. "It's a boy," he said, his voice full of fear. In the background, I could hear a woman crying. That was the moment my life took an unexpected turn. The baby, named Lucas, was born that morning. Ethan was 20, and his girlfriend, Lily, was 19. When I visited the hospital that afternoon, Lily wouldn't even hold Lucas. She just stared blankly at the wall. Ethan paced the room, his hands shaking. I picked up that tiny, helpless baby and thought, someone has to love him. For the first few months, Ethan and Lily tried. They lived in a small apartment, but it was clear Lily was struggling. The apartment smelled of dirty clothes and sour milk. Lucas cried constantly, and Lily sat on the couch, lost in her own world. When Lucas was 6 months old, Ethan called me in a panic. "She's gone," he said. I drove to the apartment and found Ethan holding a note that said, "I can't do this. I'm sorry." Lily had left, taking all her things with her. Lucas was screaming in his crib, his diaper soaked. Ethan looked at me and said, "I can't do this either." I was just 16, with no idea how to take care of a baby. But I picked up Lucas, changed his diaper using a YouTube tutorial on my phone, and made him a bottle. 4 weeks later, Ethan was arrested for drug-related charges and was facing at least 8 years in prison. That night, my parents sat me down. "We'll help," my mother said, "but we can't be the primary caregivers. We're too old. You're young and strong, and Lucas needs someone full-time. If you don't step up, he'll go into foster care." I looked at Lucas, sleeping in his carrier. He had no mother, and his father was in prison. I was 16, and I'd never changed a diaper before that day. But I couldn't let him go into foster care. So, I said yes, not knowing I was signing away the next 7 years of my life. The first night alone with Lucas, he cried for 4 hours straight. I tried everything, feeding him, changing his diaper, rocking him, and singing to him. Nothing worked. At 2 a.m., with my laptop battery at 8%, I Googled how to stop a baby from crying. I found a video about the 5 S's: swaddle, side, shush, swing, suck. Finally, at 2:47 a.m., Lucas fell asleep on my chest. I didn't sleep that night, too afraid he'd stop breathing. In September, Stanford sent a final reminder to confirm my enrollment. I held the envelope, looked at Lucas sleeping in the crib I'd set up in my room, and put the letter in my desk drawer. I never opened it. My guidance counselor called me twice, but I couldn't answer. If I heard her voice, I'd break down. For the next 7 years, my life revolved around Lucas. I woke up at 4:30 a.m. every day to make him breakfast. Then I'd drop him off at my parents' house and go to my morning job at a coffee shop. After work, I'd pick him up, feed him lunch, and then go to my evening job at a medical office. I got home around 10:45 p.m. Put Lucas to bed by midnight, and then slept for only 4 hours. My parents said they'd help, but all they did was put Lucas in front of the TV for 8 hours, feed him junk food, and forget to change his diaper. One day, when Lucas was 3, I found him alone in the house. He pointed to the garage, where my parents were arguing about finances. They hadn't checked on him for over an hour. His diaper was so full it had leaked through his pants. That's when I stopped trusting them. But daycare was expensive, costing $856 a month. I was making about $28,000 a year between my 2 jobs, and I couldn't afford it. So, I kept every receipt, every expense, for Lucas's daycare, doctor visits, clothes, toys, and food. In 2014, when I bought a used laptop for $120, I started a spreadsheet to track every dollar I spent. By the time Lucas turned 7, I'd spent $89,238. 16, and my parents had contributed nothing. When Lucas was 4, he started calling me Mama. The first time my mother heard it, she crouched down and said, "No, sweetie. She's your Aunt Marilyn. Your daddy will come home someday and explain everything." Lucas looked confused, and I wanted to scream, "I am his mother." But I didn't. That silence cost me dearly. In May 2012, a social worker named Amelia Thompson came to my parents' house. A neighbor had reported that a small child was often left alone. Amelia's report documented Lucas's neglect. He was underweight, had a diaper rash, and showed signs of being left unattended. I took 2 weeks of unpaid leave to fix the situation. I took Lucas to a pediatrician, bought him new clothes, and proved to the Child Protective Services, CPS, that someone was taking care of him. Amelia pulled me aside after her final visit and said, "You're doing everything, and they're doing nothing. This isn't sustainable." I knew she was right, but I didn't know what to do. 2 years later, in March 2014, Amelia called me at work. We received another report about Lucas. "Your parents left him home alone from 10 a.m. M. Until 3 p.m. M. A neighbor found him trying to make lunch by himself. He's 6 years old, Marilyn. My hands went numb. I met with a free legal aid attorney named Sophia Chen. She reviewed the CPS reports and said, "You have a strong case for custody, but your parents will fight this and try to make you the bad guy." I said, "I don't care. I just need Lucas to be safe." In May 2014, I filed an emergency custody petition in the county family court. The filing fee was $156, which was 3 months of my savings. The day my parents were served, my father called me at midnight. "You filed court papers against us? Your own parents?" My mother grabbed the phone and shrieked, "You're trying to steal him after all we've done for you." I replied, "I'm not stealing him. I'm protecting him from you." She said, "You're going to regret this." The court hearing was in June 2014. Judge Isabella Reed presided over the case. I had a cheap legal aid attorney, while my parents had an expensive, polished lawyer. My attorney presented the CPS reports, my financial records, and a letter from Lucas's pediatrician documenting my consistent care. My parents' attorney argued that I was too young, financially unstable, and seeking custody out of spite. Judge Reid looked at me and asked, "Miss Monroe, you're 22 years old and work 2 jobs. Can you realistically provide stability for this child?" I answered, "I've been providing stability for 6 years, Your Honor. I'm just asking for the legal right to keep doing it." The judge decided on a 6-month review. For the next 3 months, my parents pretended to be good caregivers. They took parenting classes and kept the house clean when Amelia visited. But in September, they stopped. Amelia called me and said, "They're not taking this seriously." I replied, "I know. I'm ready to refile." 3 weeks before the 6-month review in December 2014, we got notice that Ethan had filed for early release. If approved, he'd be home by January. The judge postponed our custody hearing, saying, "Let's see if the biological father's return changes the situation." I thought Ethan coming home would help. I thought he'd see what I'd done and side with me. But I was so wrong. In January 2015, Ethan walked out of prison after serving 7 years of an 8-year sentence. He moved back into my parents' house. 2 weeks after he got home, my father sat him down and told him a lie. "While you were in prison, Marilyn tried to steal your son. She filed court papers to take him away from you permanently." Ethan came to me, confused and hurt. "Did you try to take Lucas from me?" he asked. I tried to explain, but my parents were standing there, shaking their heads. In March 2015, my parents hired the same expensive attorney and filed for Ethan to gain full custody. The petition painted me as an outsider trying to usurp Ethan's rights. On April 20, 2015, Judge Reed ruled in favor of Ethan. I was granted visitation every other weekend, supervised for the first 3 months. Lucas moved into my parents' house on April 25. My first scheduled visitation was cancelled. They said Lucas had a cold. The next one was also cancelled, citing doctor's appointments. On May 30, I showed up at their house anyway. The door was locked, the curtains were drawn, and their car was in the driveway. I called the police for a welfare check. An officer knocked on the door, and my father answered. Lucas was there, looking healthy. The officer told me, "The child is with his legal guardians. You need to leave." On June 15, 2015, I received a letter from my parents' attorney. It said, "Further contact will be considered harassment. Stop." I never saw Lucas again for nearly 11 years. I spiraled into a deep depression after losing Lucas. I quit both my jobs, stopped answering my phone, and either slept for 14 hours a day or not at all. My friend Lisa from the coffee shop came to my apartment in August 2016 with groceries and an application to community college. "You can't give up," she said. "Lucas wouldn't want you to." I enrolled in the nursing program that fall, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to become someone Lucas would be proud of if I ever saw him again. It took me 4 years to earn my nursing degree and another 2 for my physician assistant certification. In 2018, I moved to San Francisco, 300 miles from my hometown, to get away from my parents. I worked on the front lines during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 and 2021, throwing myself into 12-hour shifts to keep my mind off Lucas. Every year on April 15th, his birthday, I sent him a card to my parents' address, but every year it came back stamped return to sender. In October 2023, I met Mark at the hospital where I was working. His father was having surgery, and I was the PA on rotation. We talked in the waiting room, and he asked me out for coffee. On our first date, he asked about my family. I almost lied, but something about him made me tell the truth. I raised my nephew for 7 years, and my parents took him away from me. I haven't seen him since, I said. I expected him to leave, but instead, he reached across the table and held my hand. That must have been unbearable, he said. Mark proposed to me on December 14, 2025, at a beautiful park overlooking the city skyline. He got down on one knee and said, "I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel alone again." I said yes before he even finished speaking. 2 days later, my mother called. "Congratulations, sweetheart. We'd love to meet Mark," she said. Part of me wanted to hang up, but another part, the part that still craved my parents' approval, wanted to believe it was real. Mark asked me if I wanted them at the wedding. I said, "I don't know. Part of me wants them to see I'm happy without them." We agreed to have one dinner with them. We drove to my hometown in January 2026. My parents took us to the fanciest restaurant in town. They were overly charming, but I realized they didn't care about me. They only asked Mark about his job, salary, and family background. After we got back to San Francisco, Mark started to suspect something was off. One night, he couldn't sleep. He Googled my name and Lucas's name along with the custody case. He found the 2014 court filing, a public record. He then called his friend, a forensic accountant named Ava, to help him. Ava spent 3 weeks going through my old bank statements and built a spreadsheet showing every expense I'd made for Lucas from 2008 to 2015, totaling $89,238. 16, while my parents had contributed nothing. Mark also found Amelia through LinkedIn. She'd retired from CPS in 2019. He called her, and she remembered me well. That girl was a saint. She saved that baby from 2 terrible grandparents, she said. She agreed to write an affidavit about my parents' neglect. In March, Mark hired a private investigator. It took 4 days to find Lucas. He was a freshman at Stanford, living in a dorm, on a merit scholarship, and majoring in pre-med. His emergency contact was Ethan, but not my parents. Mark debated whether to contact Lucas. 3 days before the rehearsal dinner, my mother called to confirm the details. Her questions were too specific, and I knew something was up. I told Mark about the call, and he pulled out a thick manila folder from his desk drawer. "This is insurance," he said. "It's to protect you when your parents try to destroy you in front of everyone you love." On April 15, 2026, Lucas's 18th birthday, I sent him a card like I did every year. Little did I know, he was living just a few miles from me. 3 hours after I mailed the card, Mark called him. He told Lucas about the rehearsal dinner and his suspicion that my parents were planning to publicly accuse me of abandoning him. Lucas said, "I've been looking for her for 2 years. I thought she didn't want to see me." Mark replied, "She's been sending you birthday cards for 11 years. Your grandparents sent them all back." Lucas's voice broke. "I know. I found them." On April 16, 2026, at 6 p.m. The rehearsal dinner took place at a beachfront restaurant. There were 62 guests, my co-workers, Mark's family, and our friends. I wore a beautiful red dress and felt hopeful. My parents were late. At 7:15, they walked in. My mother was wearing black, looking like she was at a funeral. She walked straight to our